Those who face eternity easily forget what a lifetime means, what an ending means.
You know it doesn't have to be this way.
No, Kunavang, it does. They need me.
It's End of Dragons Daily 48. Welcome back. This is the community back and forth show in which we discuss all sorts of fun topics to do with the future of Guild Wars 2 and End of Dragons. Footage in the background, I'll be back to map completing, still waiting for the new PC. I'm really excited to get it done actually. I've got like 3 characters that are nearly there, and those long-time viewers of mine might remember that way back I got map completion on my warrior but never actually accepted the reward, so I had like the world comp icon floating over the minimap. And that was really cool. I like looking back at my old videos and seeing that UI element there. So I'm thinking of doing it again, since I'm not exactly desperate to grab a legendary at the moment. What map specifically, I don't know. I haven't shot the footage just yet. Also, as a little bit of a sidebar, lots of people have been coming to the guild. And can I just say, for most of you joining, if you haven't looked yet, you can check out the Discord. We have a section on there for all the stuff the guild is currently doing. And there's like 4 or 5 big initiatives and things that are actually being ran by members of the community. I don't think everyone's quite in the know about that. I have messaged the GMs, and hopefully in a future episode, I can list out to you all exactly what's going on. But since activity is snowballing up and up and up, I figure it was a good time to mention. And yes, we are still recruiting. All you have to do is hit the link for the Discord in the description. Right, let's jump in. Some miscellaneous comments. First, we've got Dan, who says, as much as I like the Frozen for 100 years idea, and by the way, a lot of you guys responded to this one, I can't see it happening, Dan says. It feels too far of a jump. Plus, are we wiping out all the other characters, or are they getting frozen too? Jormag is just going to let us chill for 100 years while they do their thing? Aureen is good with us being absent, or is she dead or frozen? Are we so important that everything goes to shit when we get frozen? I think it would be epic and a really great storyline with a ton of possibilities, but I think it is too risky for ArenaNet to pull the trigger on. There are too many other safer ways, in reference to avoiding player complaints, to bring us to Cantha and have the story continue. I have a lot of thoughts on this. First of all, the gist of what you're saying I think is right. I think it is really unrealistic, and you know, I'm enthusiastic about the idea because it's brave and risky, as I said in all these ways before. But as a couple of you other guys commented as well, to me, it's not that they have to go 100 years. And, you know, the suspension of disbelief of the whole time travel returning to previous map thing especially is kind of crazy if you go to 100 years or 200 years. But the idea is the principle works, and maybe we can look at a more realistic time jump. Now, I think 10 or 20 years, probably 10 is a little, 10 to 15, allows us to have all the same characters with us, and the time jumps occurred, and it's had ample opportunity for things to seriously go to shit, especially in the context of Tyria as we know it through the 10 years the MMO's been running. How many crazy world-bending events have already occurred? It would work out. And in this way, you actually get another really powerful thing, which is you get to see all of our companions still around, except, yeah, some of them are maybe dead or injured or whatever, but they've all aged up, you know. You get to see kind of a grey-whiskered, grizzled, older version of Ritlock. You know, maybe he's one of the first guys we meet and he's almost unrecognizable. Maybe you see, you know, a Casimir that's gone a bit unhinged in some way. Maybe we see Marjorie, who's really embraced the idea of being a Reaper, and she's got like this dark hooded shroud on all the time, and you've got to figure out what happened. There's a lot of really rich things they could do with that. You know, when I look at the Warcraft RTSs and how they transitioned and some of the excitement about World of Warcraft itself coming out with Classic, it was, for a lot of people, I think, that experience of being able to meet these powerful heroes and people you knew in context from one moment in one game to where they are now in Azeroth at the launch of the MMO. And so I do really like this idea, but maybe not a 100-year gap, maybe a slightly shorter one. It's a funny thing as well, if we are using this as like a transition between Guild Wars 2 and a Project Tyria, like the next game is after the time jump, that means a lot of weird things. Like, here's a concept I've never really thought until this discussion came up. But the idea that they could release a new Guild Wars MMO, but as a thing to grab as many old players as possible back, it's that you're playing the same character again. Like, I'd never even really considered that might be possible, but it kind of is if they really wanted to. I think it would be a squandered opportunity for what it's worth to do a sequel MMO that is set anywhere near this period of time in Tyria, honestly. And especially if it was still dealing with the Elder Dragons and stuff. So there's a lot of reasons I don't like this. But just as a concept, I think it's interesting to think about the idea that they're saying you are still the commander in the next game. Like, it's a whole new game. You'll go through character creator again. You can make the commander look different or whatever. Maybe you were playing it as a Sylvari before, and now you're going to be playing it as an Asura. But it is canonically the same character as before. I think people would kind of latch to that, and it might actually be to the devs' benefit to catch over some of these cynics who feel like, you know, the rug has been pulled out from under them, so to speak. And I hate that phrasing when it comes to the idea of a Project Tyrion. I think it's completely disingenuous. But hopefully you guys get what I mean. And we've definitely seen it in other games. Like, for example, I remember going between Mass Effect 1 and Mass Effect 2, completely changing the way that Shepard looked and some of the choices that I'd made in the past. And so maybe there's an idea there for the MMO. There's another weird thing as well, is if this was like a transition idea, a big time freeze or whatever, it kind of makes, to me, Jormag like the ultimate dragon of everything, because it's like Jormag wins. It's like Guild Wars 2 ends with us failing to a dragon. And which dragon was it? Was it Kralkatorrik? Was it Zaitan? Was it... No, it was Jormag. And I never in a million years would have ever put that much emphasis on Jormag. Jormag to me is the milk toast Elder Dragon, if that's the right phrase, the most boring, the most vanilla, the most mundane. And I was really hoping Icebreed Saga could, you know, do a lot with her, but obviously now we're being kind of rushed out. And for what it's worth, I do think that Icebreed Saga did some cool things. It's easy to forget all those really intriguing and atmospheric whispers and stuff from earlier in the saga, and just how cool some of the new designs were, like the Bone Skinner enemies. Back to your comment, you put specific emphasis and explanation on Aurene here, which I think is kind of funny. You say, oh, is she dead or frozen? You don't have to do that. Aurene, if there's any character, Aurene is the one character you don't have to explain or do anything or change anything about. She's an Elder Dragon. This period of time we're talking about, even if it was the 100-year period of time, is like a fraction of a blink of an eye. Aurene would be the one consistent thing through both in terms of allies we have that could be completely unchained. And also in your comment, I want to pull on this idea. There are too many other safer ways in reference to avoiding player complaints to bring us to Cantha and have the story continued. There are safer ways to bring us to Cantha to avoid player complaints. Now, I don't hate your comment, but I hate this philosophy. I hate this idea. I hate this thought that you can't be creative, you can't do brave things, you can't do exciting or captivating things, because the truth is that game development in the 2020s is how best to do the safe, most middle-of-the-road BS to not tick your user base off. If you're going into work each day and you're coming up with ideas and you're implementing this product where one of the main guiding principles is how do we not tick people off, I think you are destined to be a boring, unoriginal, lame game. And I don't want to see that from ArenaNet. That especially ArenaNet. Of all other MMO devs out there, ArenaNet is not the one that should fall into that trap. And in many ways, for what it's worth, I think they already have fallen into that trap. And it makes me very sad. I don't want to see the community actively encouraging it. I mean, Christ. And for what it's worth, I get it's easy for me to be on a pedestal here and say that, despite the fact that, you know, what I'm essentially saying is for them to be risky and it could introduce all these catastrophic ideas coming into the game. On some level, these devs you have to trust are intelligent and will implement good stuff, and they have to trust themselves that their expertise, that their knowledge, that their education as game designers counts for something. The community can give feedback. That doesn't make every word in every sentence they utter something you must bow to. You're the one that understands the product. You're the one that's educated as a game designer. They're not. They're your consumer, and you lead them. But hey, maybe I'm getting off track. Like I get it. They need to be considerate of doing really dramatic or ridiculous stuff the community blatantly wouldn't want. But the idea of that always being in your mind, oh, I don't want to do something that will piss people off, I think that's a kind of a negative energy to that you really don't want to be clouding all your decision making, do you? Also, here in editing, I just want to splice in. One of the main reasons I picked this comment was an observation I wanted to make, which was that the Path of Fire moment where we die and come back to life, that almost could have been the same beat as this with 100 years pass, or like a 10-year pass or whatever, a 15-year pass, where we see like an old whiskered, grizzled, grey-looking Ritlock. It would simply have been when we return from the mist. They could have made it that time had moved forward there, and when we meet everyone on top of the plateau, it had been years instead of, how long did they say it was in the POF in the end? Just a couple of days? So, you know, they had this idea within their reach already. They chose not to go with it. It feels weird that they could go straight back to the idea again now. Next Level says, I missed the Frostgorge champ train. It gradually fell out of relevance. There's so many farms and material sources nowadays that you just don't bother with map rewards anymore. Yeah, I do know what you mean. It's kind of funny. Yesterday when I was talking about this, I kind of specifically held back. I didn't allow myself to say that I missed it. Because on some level, I do miss it. And on some level, there is some nostalgia. But I don't know whether it's constructive really to think about. Because to be honest, the Frostgorge champ train was not a very high quality experience. You know, what has essentially happened is new stuff's out, like the Living World Season 4 metas, like Palawadan, like the Drizzlewood Coast that we're in at the moment, and everything else in between. The devs have bumped the rewards on those to make sure people are on them. And if we actually do an objective, proper look at earning money by Frostgorge training versus earning money in those other areas, the other areas are way higher quality. There's way more divergent experiences, more things that you can do, more interesting stuff happening, better environments, and so on. So yeah, we've been pushed away, and I think that that's the right decision. But you know, there is this weird nostalgia and panging for old things that we used to do that made us happy on some level. I think it's very easy to forget how bored we were during all of that stuff as well. And you know, this is a discussion that I think happens a lot with dungeons as well. People will remember even grinding COF P1 over and over and over again as like happy days. Even though the truth is, if the devs were to reinstate the optimal rewards in a place like that, it would be a terrible patch for the game. It really would be. And I think that we, as the community, have to be very careful about our inobjectivities on this stuff, and most people aren't. Though, one thing I would say as well, I mean, there is kind of a utopian dream idea out there where they can shuffle players around well enough that all of it's valid. You know, the more content that's in the game that people can actively go to, the better. And to me, that means rotating reward emphasis. What that means is stuff like monthlies, that means dailies, that means weeklies, those kinds of systems that mean depending on what day you log into Guild Wars 2, there's a new world of content that is most viable for you, waiting for you. That is the best way forwards. You know, maybe on Monday, it is the Frostgorge champ chain, and I do that, and it's maybe a bit boring, but it's a kind of a new or even a nostalgic experience for me. And then tomorrow we're back to Drizzlewood. The day after, maybe Silver Waste is where most of the community is, and LFG is really popping. Not exclusively so, but there is that emphasis. Maybe the day after that, the Death Branded Shatterer has got like the really, really good reward. This is what I think, we mentioned the map bonus reward system in the previous part. This is what that system exactly can do. That does actually rotate daily. Or is it weekly? It's one of those. And that's actually allowed people to play the Frostgorge champ train, at least in part sometimes, you know, maybe when large skulls and charged lodestones and stuff appear on there. This is what I mean. The devs need to just hammer these systems out, prop them up, and I do think you can have that utopian edition where everything's there. But in broad strokes, I think the game's done a good job moving us away from it, really. Fred says, hey WP, I love your content. Thanks for the steady stream. Well, my pleasure. Thank you. I posted this before the gap of episode 40, before we had the weekend. Could we talk about activities? I'm baffled since launch that we don't have a team keg brawl as an esports style feature. I'm sure this could take very little work to create a completely automated tournament system that will create a whole new competitive scene. I mean, they already have the tech and R&D done by this point. Also, it's a Corteria feature, so available free to play, and that will attract new incidental players, which may only be interested in Keg Brawl for streaming in the first place, to get the best subscription-free action MMO as a nice side bonus. Well, look, activities, I think, have always got the short end of the stick, and this is one of those situations, people love to talk about how neglected they are in World vs. World, or how neglected they are in PvP, blah, blah, blah. There are other areas of the game that are neglected, and you might say justifiably so, because nobody even complains about the fact that they're neglected. How many people are out there arguing for South Sun Survival? Not many. Keg Brawl is particularly funny because some of those achievements are super long-term grind achievements, and there were, probably until like 2014 or so, serious communities dedicated to that game mode, and they would play the hell out of it and properly scrim and stuff, and it had some issues and some honor rules ended up coming in, but people did rally around it for as long as they could, and then eventually obviously they move away because ArenaNet never gave them what they needed. This is another example of something that I think a really well designed and newly lifted up daily system could work. It's funny you say it would be very easy to add a full tournament system. I don't agree with that, but I do agree that they have that infrastructure in terms of other forms of tournaments in the game, and you know, we've seen that they can even mix those up with the 2v2s and so on. So honestly, I really think that one big thing that PvP is missing, and I always would have liked, is kind of a special playlist that rotates in every now and then. So you have ranked, you have unranked, and then you have like this bonus one. I think the bonus one could maybe for a couple of weeks a year have Keg Brawl on there. And sure, run an automated tourney for Keg Brawl. It is closer to do than I think people realise. But what this would also allow them to do is maybe for a couple of weeks while Winter's Day is going, you can have snowball tournaments. Snowball tournaments actually even have precedent in Guild Wars 1, and the snowball arena stuff in Guild Wars 2 is actually really well thought out, and it's really fun. It's even, as far as I remember, kind of competitive and well balanced. Now, I'm sure there's wriggles, so you watch how the community's playing it, you see where you think the biggest issues are, and what, you know, like with the Keg Brawl thing, people end up with honor rules. You see what those honor rules were, you implement and tweak it for the next year, or whatever. You'll notice that pretty much every single festival, except the newest one, Dragon Bash, they all have a PvP format. All of those PvP formats are basically dead and people don't utilize and play. I would like to be able to queue into that with Heart of the Mists, get bonus rewards in there, and maybe cap out the festival with a tournament. That would do a ton for the PvP side of this game. Don't get me wrong, I've talked very cynically about PvP in some of these recent videos, but there are things that they can and have been doing. This is one of them. Do I think ArenaNet will actually go for it though? No. And would I pick this over more work and emphasis on Canthan stuff? Well, I think probably I would go with Cantha stuff at the moment. I don't know, it's hard. It's hard because I really do think there'd be big value in this. Devin says, hey WP, I just thought of a great solution to re-adding existing specialization weapons, like a new version of a greatsword for a warrior. No one likes the idea of removing the old weapon skills, so what if the spec adds a new version of a weapon where the skills can be selectable like with utilities? You right click on a greatsword 2, for example, and you can change the core skill and the elite spec skill. This tech already exists in the game, so it's easier to implement than a new system, and apart from that, this allows great build diversity. You can have a mix of core spec skills, you can have two greatswords, 1 core and 1 elite, etc. Now, yeah, I can see this. I could actually see this specifically for the warrior, where you kind of get to choose between these. It's funny because this does start to break down like one of the fundamental ideas of the weapons being tied to skill system in Guild Wars 2, but I can see it. I don't know whether just because the UI has capability for it on the right-hand side of the skill bar, that's easily portable straight over to the left. Sometimes this stuff's a bit arcane and weird, and we are talking about like stuff fundamental to Guild Wars 2 that was written like over a decade ago, so you never know, but I could see this as a solution. I don't really have much more to say on it. It would be interesting. Maybe, again, something to hold off for the side when they decide that enough's enough. We've got enough elite specializations. Again, I'm predicting probably 18 more will come into the game, 9 with End of Dragons, and then 9 on an expansion after that. At the most. That is the absolute most. I don't think we'll go up to 27 by that point. I think they'll be looking at new things. Maybe this. Marshall says, not sure if I would buy another Destruction of Lion's Arch without seeing those huge weapons and defenses in action. Yeah, you know, people talk a lot about unresolved stories, places that they want to see the game go. And I gotta say, this is one of the things for me. I really want to see Lion's Arch get attacked. I want to see that Hydra, the Tidal Wave, all that kind of stuff. But I want to see them fight back. And ever since the end of Season 1, I do think it would be interesting to see these people survive an assault. You got to remember, a lot of you guys watching this video may not have played a lot of Guild Wars 1, but if you played a lot of Guild Wars 1, like you even did all the quests which were Be a Prophecy's character going to Nightfall, for example, you'll realize that over the entire canon of this franchise, there have been like 6 or 7 major assaults on Lion's Arch. There have been so many of them, like it's insane. And here's a funny thing, I actually do believe if we were, and it's an MMO, so I don't think you'd ever really have this moment, but just to have fun with it, let's imagine a final story moment for Guild Wars 2. Like, this is the end of Guild Wars 2. We are never doing any more story. What is the climax of all of it? I kind of feel like it's another attack on Lion's Arch. One final big attack, except this time we tried to defend it and we're seeing the guns being used and the walls and all that kind of stuff. I mean, maybe it's a little bit boring. I honestly think, for all the bad credit that Season 1 gets, bad credit? That's not the right phrase. But for all the crap that Season 1 gets, the second half of Season 1 was really good. And I think all the stuff about Lion's Arch's attack there was done super well. So maybe that fantasy has been realized well enough. Maybe just some kind of cutscene where we see the guns fire or something is the most we'd ever see. But I do think this is an interesting concept for an end of Guild Wars 2, which is a concept that I don't think you'd ever see, because it's one of those things that would just cause them to lose a ton of their active user base. And that is not a good idea. And finally, we have X, who says, I believe Lissa is coming back to Tyria to save humanity from the Elder Dragons, consuming the dragon's power and becoming the ultimate being. That's what all the pink and dreamy stuff in the End of Dragons promo material is. They're visions from Lissa. Lissa is trying to be the End of Dragons. I don't use Reddit or the forums, so this may already be common knowledge to the community. Also, I have a sneaking suspicion that ArenaNet has told WP these spoilers for the X-Pack, and he's keeping it quiet. He's been diverting discussion away from this. No, they absolutely haven't. And trust me, if I did know some kind of spoilery thing, I would not be touching on the topic whatsoever, right? The reason I'm diverting you away from Lissa is because what you just outlined is a God versus Dragons story to a certain degree, which is what I feel that Path of Fire did. I think that what they're mostly interested in is a Dragons versus Dragons story for this X-Pack. I think if you're going to give a one-line synopsis, I think that's the one. I don't think they're going to retread the Balthazar stuff too much. I think there are things that we need answers to, and learning a little bit more about Lissa's mirror and what's special going on with her. And I think that you could be right with this idea. It's just this fundamental prospect that Lissa wants to do this, or that she knows a little bit more about the Elder Dragons. She has this idea. I don't think she's the voice in the trailer because, again, it's a new character. How many times do I have to say that? And I don't think Lissa quite counts as a new character. I mean, in some ways she does. But as a broad concept, you could be onto something. You might even be right about like, the colors and stuff on the trailer. Will Lissa appear in the expansion? She may even. I think she'll have something to do here, but she will not be a major emphasis. I don't think. And in fact, the more distant and paradoxical and weird and uninterpretable she is, the better. I think the day they give us like a concrete appearance of Lissa in the same way that they gave it to us of Cormier will be the day that I no longer love Lissa. I don't really think she works if I know her motivations. Keep her as like this phantasmal enigma, please. Well, there you have it, guys. That's End of Dragons Daily for today. I'm still waiting on the lore questions. That's the current upcoming topic. I know we've discussed it a bit here. This was supposed to be a miscellaneous one. Also, I did want to say, I don't know why this has happened. It's just a weird coincidence or something. I want to say thank you to those of you commenting elsewhere on the channel about the Ghost of Ascalon audiobook. You know, I get various comments about the LPs that I do and so on. That are kind of running constantly and separate to this show. I tend to respond to those by typing out responses rather than in a video. But a lot of you guys have been responding on the Ghost of Ascalon, which is awesome. I'm so happy that people are still finding and using that playlist. And I guess that will be the thing I shield for today as well. On the end slate, in like 2 seconds, there's a link to it you guys can click and listen to some of the earliest lore we got about Ritlock and Logan and the treaty with the Char. It's all pretty relevant for the Icebrood saga. Thanks, guys. I'll see you on the next one. See, look, there it is. You can click it. See?